Evaluation question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? In film production, the normal conventions used are the title of the film, setting and location, costumes and props, camera and editing, and title, font and style. These conventions are used to set up characters, the story and the genre. Story and how the opening sets it. Our film is called Redemption and is an action film, similar to other films such as Taken and Mission Impossible. The main character is on the run from two thugs who are after him due to an unfortunate event that landed him on the hit list of a notorious mob boss. We wanted to make it clear that he was on the run, so we made him constantly in shot and running in most of them. We also tried to make the difference between him and his pursuers clearly noticeable, so it was clear that he wasn't with them. The main character is covered in blood, wearing a tie, and has a white shirt on, whereas the two men chasing him are wearing black Converse and black jackets. We also made sure to keep a distinguishable distance between the main character and the thugs to clearly show they were separate and against each other. Genre and how the opening suggests it. Our film is an action film with the subgenre being thriller. We wanted to show this clearly throughout the opening, which we did, mainly with the use of sound being diegetic and non-diegetic. Our use of non-diegetic background music set the mood and added a sense of tension to all the scenes. It worked especially well on the scene where the main character was hidden behind a car, as it left the audience constantly wondering whether or not he would be found. The use of diegetic sounds such as footsteps being heard throughout the majority of the opening also added tension and thrill built up through the opening, as it created a quick pace and meant the protagonist could be caught at any time. The fast pacing of our opening had a similar effect and added a sense of action to the opening. We also used blood, similar to a lot of action films which incorporate fight scenes, the Hunger Games being a good example. We don't show this fight in our opening, but it is something we can refer to and show later on in the film. Setting and location. We knew for an action film that we wanted our location to be somewhere with a lot of layers, where anything could happen at any given time, as most action/thriller films tend to have quite structured settings that could potentially cause harm to the main characters due to large layouts. A multi-story car park was perfect for this, as it was out in the opening, meaning in the world of the film, the antagonist could easily put random members of the public in danger, similar to films such as Spectre, where huge explosions could happen at any time. However, a multi-story car park also has quieter, darker areas, which was great for setting the mood and adding mystery to our film. The layout of the car park was simple, with 3 floors, but the concrete columns, winding staircases, and sheer size of the area added to the action. We also filmed on a day when it had rained, so the sky was grey and the ground was wet. This not only made the sound of the footsteps more prominent, but also set the mood for the scene. Costumes and props. Costumes and props were very important with setting the scene and mood of the film. If all the characters had been wearing brightly coloured clothes, the mood would have completely changed and the sense of action would have been lost. We had the main character wear a tie, a white blood-stained shirt and black trousers with black shoes, as this was something that is constantly used in action films to make the main character seem suave and smart. Examples of this can be seen in films such as Mission Impossible Rogue Nation and once again Spectre. In action films such as these, the protagonists are often seen wearing suits, and as the scenes pass by, the suits become more and more worn out, with buttons becoming undone and shirts becoming untucked. We try to incorporate this into our opening. Our main character is in a relatively smart attire, but we made it scruffy by undoing his top buttons, making his tie loose, and having parts of his shirt untucked. This was done in order to make it seem like he had been on the run for a while. We also had the use of props such as the knife and the fake blood to not only add action but thrill and mystery as to what had occurred beforehand to cause this opening scene to happen. This is similar to films such as Deadpool, which use flashbacks to build the story and character. These props allow us to have something we could possibly flash back on throughout the film. The props were simple, as we wanted to keep the realism in our opening. A lot of action films that incorporate guns involved spies or secret government agencies. As our film focuses on thugs and gangs, we used a knife and blood to make it seem more realistic, as many gangs nowadays use knives. The other characters in the opening were the two thugs that were chasing the main character. We made them seem like antagonists with the use of dark colours and leather jackets. In many action films, the more violent and thug-like characters often wear leather/black jackets to make them seem intimidating. In films such as Kick-Ass, the mafia underlings are all seen to be wearing black suits. We chose more casual black clothing for our opening, however, as we wanted to make the connotations of the characters show them as underlings or hitmen, as opposed to higher people in charge. Camera work and editing. The main factor we took into consideration when working with the camera and whilst we edited was that each shot needed to be fast-paced in order to keep the pace of the film going. We started with a long shot of the surrounding area to show how calm it was. This contrasted the next shot, which cut to the protagonist running through a puddle. This was a long angle shot, which we used in order to increase the sound of the splash and quickly change the pacing of the opening. If the shot had been further away, the impact of the foot smacking into the puddle wouldn't have been as effective. A good film to compare this to is the Hunger Games scene where Katniss destroys the supplies. The scene is steady, focused and calm, which can be compared to our initial shot. This quickly changes due to an explosion, which can be compared to our establishing shot, as the changes in mood are very quick and apparent. A difference, however, is that the Hunger Games scene starts with close-ups and ends with long shots, whereas ours does the opposite. We thought going from a long shot to a closer-up shot had a bigger impact, hence why we did it. Throughout the rest of the opening, we used medium close-ups, tracking shots, and match-on action to keep the fast pace of the film. This keeps everyone in shot without ever showing their faces in great detail and keeping the distance between the characters easily distinguishable. As we never see the two antagonists' faces in great detail, the sense of danger is increased as you never know who they are, meaning they could show up suddenly and cause trouble. The use of tracking shots allowed us to make it clear that the characters are running, as well as following the conventions of many action films that use tracking shots to keep the scene moving. A close-up of the knife dropping on the floor helps to reinforce the subgenre of thriller, as it shows two sets of feet behind the car. We don't know who these feet belong to, so the audience begins to question what is about to happen. Having the knife in the shot subtly denotes that they have something to do with the accident, which has flustered the main character and means they may be dangerous. We edited all these shots together with cuts in between to make sure the shots were constantly changing. This technique is a technique used throughout action films to make it seem fast-paced. The sound used in our film was all diegetic except the background music, which was non-diegetic. All non-diegetic sound had to be copyright-free, so after unsuccessfully trying to make our own backing track on GarageBand, we found a copyright-free music website online and found tracks that would match our film. The main track throughout the opening had a constant drum beat in it. The main track sounded quite eerie whilst the drum beat enforced the sense of danger and suspense. Title, font and style. The title of our film is Redemption. After considering a few other titles, we decided on Redemption as it is short and snappy, similar to those such as Die Hard, Taken and Spectre. It gives a general idea of what the film is about, whilst not giving too much away, and leaves the question what/who needs to be redeemed unanswered. A lot of action films use bold fonts and white lettering throughout the opening titles. We replicated this as we thought it matched the style of our film greatly. It was also suitable for the target audience as it looked quite smart and masculine. We had the opening titles on separate shots to the actual film, as we felt that the bold lettering took away from the opening itself. We used a black background on each of the titles as it made the titles stand out and enhanced how bold they looked. The amount of time each title was on screen for was relatively quick, being around 3 seconds. This was to keep up the pacing that we had built from the opening scene, with the opening shots changing quickly. If we kept each shot on screen for too long, the pacing of the film would decrease, which wasn't something we wanted to do. Having the title separate from the opening itself also allowed time for the music to build up, which we used to lead into the end of the opening before the video finished. Joseph and George's names show up at the same time, as they play equal parts in the film and are both introduced alongside each other. How characters are introduced. In our opening, we are introduced to the main character, played by Matthew Stevenson, the two thugs, played by George Edwards and Joseph Parsons, and the man in the hoodie, played by Matthew Bell. In many action films, a lot, if not all, of the main characters are introduced in the first opening scene. We kept this constant in our opening scene, as well as introducing the main protagonist first, followed by two antagonists, as well as secretly introducing the main antagonist without the audience registering he had been introduced. We are first introduced to Matthew's character. This is similar to films such as Taken, where we are introduced to one of the main characters first. This is then followed by the two thugs, played by Joseph and George. We introduce them with a low shot of their feet. Again, this is similar to Taken, where the men that take the main character's daughter are first introduced via their feet. We knew it was important for them to be introduced together, as it shows they are both part of one unit without individual thoughts. Finally, we are introduced to Matthew Bell's character, the man in the hoodie. Although he is only in shot for a few brief seconds, we made sure to emphasize that the main character bumped into him, which left it open for his character to be introduced later on in the film. Similarly to films such as Skyfall or The Heat, you don't know who is really in charge until later on in the film, but subtle hints are given throughout that someone else is higher up calling the shots. The quick clash of the two characters can be seen as this hint. Evaluation question 2. How does your media product represent particular social groups? Our media production represents the following social groups: age, gender, and race. Our main character is seen to be holding a knife and covered in blood, which connotes some form of violence and threat. The two men chasing him are wearing leather and other black items of clothing. The one on the right, when first introduced, is seen to be wearing a hooded jacket. Black people are often stereotyped as being dominant in parts of gangs and mobs. All of our characters are white, which challenges this stereotype. It does, however, conform to the stereotype that teenagers/young adults often have placed against them, being that they wear hoodies and can go around terrorizing people in groups and gangs. All of the antagonists in the scene are wearing some form of hooded or black jacket, specifically the man with his hood up, whom our main character clashes with. A hooded male is often assumed to be hiding something and potentially dangerous, with society linking things such as hoods and knife crime to teenage males and young men around the ages of 16 to early 20s. This is why all the main characters in our opening are male, as it greatly supports this stereotype and backs up what our target audience would expect in an action film. Our main character is just a regular young man who happens to be caught up in a series of unfortunate events that have turned his world upside down. He is a young adult, and in many ways he can be likened to Dave Lazowski from Kick-Ass. Dave is also a very ordinary person who suddenly goes through an experience that changes his life and becomes involved with gang culture and crime at a young age. They are alike in many ways, such as their clothing. Both are seen wearing clothes that you wouldn't expect someone of their age to wear. Dave being a superhero outfit and at the age of 16 or 17, and our main character wearing a smart shirt, a tie at a very similar age. The outfits aren't overly complicated either. In a lot of ways, our main character is very stereotypical of the action/thriller genre, as he is wearing smart but simple clothes and has suddenly found himself in a lot of trouble. He does, however, subvert expectations of his role, as many action main roles are often played by adults, whereas ours is not. The two thug-like characters can be compared to Chris D'Amico, aka Red Mist, also from Kick-Ass. He is an underling to his father and will do anything he says out of fear to be noticed. He wears a leather superhero suit that largely sports the colours black and red. He is one of the main antagonists towards the main character Dave. This is similar to the hoodlums in our film, who also wear darkly coloured outfits and are working under someone. However, unlike Red Mist, they work together. This was to suggest that they don't think for themselves and do exactly what their boss says, similar to characters such as Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy, who act all tough, but are really working as part of a group under someone who is higher up and more powerful than them. Younger people are assumed to be less knowledgeable and less powerful than adults. We try to comply with this in our opening, which is why the two characters are younger and have to work together. Evaluation question 3. What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why? The definition for a production company is a company that provides the basis for works in the realms of the performing arts, new media art, film, television, video and radio. The production company may be directly responsible for fundraising for the production or may accomplish this through the parent company, partner or private investor. The production company handles budgeting, scheduling, scripting, the supply with talent and resources, the organisation of staff, the production itself, post-production, distribution and marketing. A production company is an independent production company, and this is the logo. The name of my company is Nightline Productions. I designed my logo based on this name, with the shape of my logo being a star, referring to the night part. I added parts of a film reel to the sides of the star, as after a bit of research on production companies, I found that many use a film-related object in the logos, normally being a film reel, which is why I tried to use it in mine. I didn't make the logo overly complicated, as I wanted it to be memorable, so people will see it and know who it belongs to. Similarly, I made it black and white so it was bold and would stand out. I looked into other production companies before deciding which would be best for my production. Nightline Productions and Matthews Production Company, Spotlight Studios would be the main production companies of our film. If we were to work with another company to achieve the best production and theatrical quality as possible, it would most likely be EuropaCorp. EuropaCorp's activities include production, theatrical distribution, international distribution, and home entertainment. They are now distributing over 500 titles. I picked EuropaCorp as they are a big production company, and they would have an interest in our film due to previous films they have worked on, such as Taken 1, 2, and 3, all of which have the same genre as our film and are very similar. Action films tend to need a reasonable budget to be made due to the cost of props, stunts, and more than often CGI. Our film won't have any CGI, but stunts and props needed later on will cost money that, as a small production company, Nightline Productions wouldn't have. EuropaCorp could also be a distributor as well, as they too have experience and knowledge. As an action film needs money to make, we would need a lot of people to watch our film once it was released to gain any profit. This could be done if we had a well-known company as a distributor. A company such as 20th Century Fox would be a perfect distributor for our film, as they have the experience similar to EuropaCorp with films such as Taken, and they also have the connections to promote our film successfully. Putting big names like these to our film will definitely spark an interest. Film ratings can be very important in the making of film, as any violent scenes and fights later on could be deemed unsuitable for some ages. The film certifications that can be given to a film are U, PG, 12, 12A, 15 and 18. Our film will not be rated an 18, as although there will be explicit language, violence and use of alcohol and drugs, it will not be to such an extreme extent that an 18 film is rated. I would suggest that our film be rated at 15. In In a 15-rated film, there could potentially be a lot of strong language, and there is no limit to the use of a lot of explicit words. The use of swearing will not be continuous, aggressive, or over the top, which is why our film is suited to a 15. Similarly, although there will be a lot of violent scenes, there will not be anything extreme or sadistic. Drugs and alcohol will also be brought up in our film, but not promoted or dwelled upon. Evaluation question 4. Who would be the audience for your media product? This is Michael, a potential member for our target audience. He is 17 and still a student, but may also be classed as both a teen and a young adult. He watches a range of films, including Iron Man, The Bourne Identity, The Matrix, Spectre, and Taken. All these films are part of either the action or thriller genre, or both. Michael does not enjoy watching romantic films or documentaries. Michael enjoys listening to music in genres such as pop, rock, or metal, and watching TV. He likes songs that have a quick beat, and TV shows such as Sherlock, a crime show, and Breaking Bad, a crime and thriller show. He equally enjoys watching animated programs such as Tokyo Ghoul and Death Note. These interests make Michael a potential audience member for our film, as the mystery created by the title Redemption and fake blood on the main character's shirt both attract the likes of Michael to watch. A lot of these TV shows also involve fight scenes, which is one more thing that will attract him to the action genre of our film. Tokyo Ghoul specifically has a lot of fight scenes and blood. The blood aspect of this is addressed in the opening, and the action genre suggests that there will be fights that will entice him to watch our film. Similarly, a lot of his interests involve thrillers, which is our subgenre. Michael is a typical teenage boy/young adult male, and many others of the same age will have the same interests as him. In our opening scene, we try and incorporate the things our target audience will enjoy and look for in an action film, hence why our film will be suitable and enjoyable production for this target audience. Evaluation question 5. How did you attract/address your target audience? When making our media product, we did audience research to look at our genre, being action and thrillers, and to see what would appeal to the general target audience for our product. We found that action/thrillers are more suited to teenagers and young adults, especially males, and that the director directing the film didn't really matter as long as it looked good. As well as this, all the interviewees had heard of films similar to ours. This is good, as it should spark some interest towards our main film. The main attraction in our film opening that helps to attract/address the audience is the fact that a lot of questions are left unanswered in our opening scene. This was aimed to leave the audience questioning what happened before the opening and what will happen later on. This will hopefully lull them into watching the rest of the film. Not only this, but the film title itself asks the question, who or what needs to be redeemed. Putting the title and the opening together also opens up the question why. The more questions we leave unanswered, the more the target audience will be attracted to go and watch the whole film. In action films, males often look up to or idolize the main character. This is often important to attracting the right audience members. If the main character were to be weak and useless, our main target audience would not be interested in watching a film about someone they dislike, let alone idolize. In order to address this, we have the scene in between the credits where the main character is suiting up and spinning the knife around with his hands. The suave and smart look of his new outfit creates a cool outfit for males to aspire to that they can obtain with relative ease. The outfit makes the character seem cool and comparable to characters such as James Bond, allowing the audience to be easily drawn into the film as the link between popular films such as James Bond can be made. Males also enjoy watching cool stunts and tricks, such as the scene with the knife hand tricks, which is once again a good way at attracting our target audience. Action films often have the main character as tough and stereotypically good-looking. Although you don't get a clean shot of the main character's face throughout the opening, his outfit and athleticism are features that would appeal to young adults and teenage males. He is also shown to have a nice-looking car towards the beginning of our opening. Cars are stereotypically quite a masculine subject and can be used to attract the male target audience further. As previously stated, James Bond is a good comparison to make towards our main character in terms of personality and outfits, not the fact that he is a spy, which our main character isn't. One way the James Bond film Skyfall attracts and appeals to its target audience is the fast pacing of the film and the constant tension and twists built up throughout it. In our opening scene, we made it fast-paced and added tension at some parts, such as the shot on the lower level of the car park, in order to replicate this sort of style and attract our target audience. Our use of background music also adds tension and greatly affects the mood of the film. Frantic races and chases are clearly good at enticing the audience, which can be seen by the fact that Skyfall was the second highest grossing film of 2012. Action scenes are somewhat expected early on in the action genre, so the constant chase throughout the opening scene will entice our audience, spark up their excitement, and leave the question open as to whether or not the main character will be caught later on in the film. Evaluation question 6. What have you learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product? Throughout the making and development of my opening sequence, I used a variety of new techniques to make it the best I could. One new technique that I used frequently whilst making my film was Blogger.com, which was a large contributor to the completion of my work. I had never had a blog before, so Blogger was a new area for me to explore. I found it fairly easy to pick up, and it enabled me to upload my work for the public and teachers to read as soon as I finished each piece. Blogger was simple enough to use, with the layout being simple and easy to maneuver around. It enabled me to add pictures via my files or an online link, videos, once again via files or from YouTube, and hyperlinks to my post. I could also edit posts whenever I needed to, if anything ever needed to be tweaked, for example spelling mistakes or missed out information. Other than posting, I could edit the template of the blog, which allowed me to change everything from the header to the colour of the writing in the sidebar. It also allowed me to change the size of each section, being the main body and the sidebars. This meant that if writing ever went outside the box or widgets, not that I added any, overlapped the sidebar, I could change the size of each column to the correct width. The blog itself is easy to navigate. All the posts are organised in date order, so it is clear what order I did each part in. It is easy to scroll through and easy to read. I made the background darker and the writing white and orange, so the contrast was good between the two colours, making my posts clear and visible. Another website I used as quite a large part of my production was YouTube. It wasn't new, as I watched YouTube videos every day. The concept of uploading videos, however, was new to me, as I had never done so before. It was very simple to upload videos, as all I had to do was select the file I wanted to upload and allow the video to process. Once that was done, I could put the video on my blog. YouTube was a great help as it sped up the process of putting my videos online. It also sped up the process of putting the videos on my blog, as doing so straight from my files took more than double the time it did than when I uploaded to YouTube first. I was able to find a large amount of content which gave us ideas for our videos and allowed us to find scenes for our tasks such as the green screen testing and film analysis. Overall, YouTube has been a great help throughout my project. I used MS Paint to create my logo, as I didn't have access to another form of photo editing software. I did find that Paint didn't have loads of tools, but I only had a short space of time to complete my logo, and due to the simple layout of Paint, it was easy to use, and I feel that I made quite a successful logo. In my opinion, the camera was the most important and most enjoyable part of the process. I really enjoyed filming both for the preliminary task and the final opening scene. I hadn't ever really used a filming camera before this project, so at first I didn't really know what I was doing. I quickly got the hang of what to do and what I could do with it thanks to the preliminary task, which allowed me to learn how to do a variety of different shots, including close-ups and match on action. When filming some shots, it was easier to use different pieces of camera equipment, including a tripod, a dolly and a mic. The tripod was key for holding shots steady and prevent any unnecessary shaking. We filmed this tracking shot using the tripod and dolly. We filmed this shot using the mic in order to get a crisper splashing sound. I am now confident in using a camera and the different techniques needed to do so. Without the camera we wouldn't have an opening scene. We also used a Canon DSLR to take our recce shots. I was fine with taking photos with it, and it was helpful due to its good quality, and the SD card made it easy to upload the photos. For editing, we used a program called Adobe Premiere Pro. This was the first time we had used this editing software since our preliminary task, but we quickly remembered how to use it and began editing with ease. Each time we rewatched our edit, we had to manually render it to avoid lagginess in the video. With all the quick cuts and fast shot changes, doing this became a little annoying as we rewatched the edit quite a lot to make sure each transition was as clean as possible. Although we didn't use a lot, Adobe Premiere Pro had a lot of effects that you could add to the video. The only effect we used was occasionally tweaking the lighting so it was constant throughout every shot. A small piece of technology that was also very helpful was my memory stick. It allowed me to transfer work from my laptop at home to school easily and was very helpful if I needed to continue working outside of school. It also allowed us to transfer our production company logos between computers so we could add them to our opening scenes. Evaluation question 7. Looking back at your preliminary task, the continuity editing task, what do you feel you have learnt in the progression from it to the full product? I feel as if my camera skills and editing skills have improved greatly since the beginning of the year, and my understanding of media-related terms that would help us later on in our final production have also greatly developed. At the beginning of the year, we were split up into groups of 3 and were asked to make a preliminary video to give us practice with pieces of equipment and help us understand the various terms and rules that would later be used in our film. These terms were the 180-degree rule, match on action, parallel editing, and shot reverse shot. We also had to incorporate a soundtrack and a conversation. As the preliminary task was based on continuity, it was very helpful when it came to our opening, as the characters were constantly moving. It is also important to pay attention to the 180-degree rule in order to prevent disorientating your viewer and confusing them as to where everyone is in shot. In our final opening scene, we tried to film all our shots from in front of or to the left of the main character. This is in order to comply with the 180-degree rule, as our scene was quite fast-paced and any confusing camera angles could have caused confusion to the audience as to where we were in the car park. We tried to use match on action in our film to keep the movement of the characters constant. This was mainly used in scenes with stairs to show how the characters were going up or down them. We tried to match up their running to show how they were constantly moving. An example of when we used match on action was when the main character ran into the lower levels of the car park. We showed him run into the car park through the entrance, and the next shot continued inside the car park, showing him hiding behind the car. I think it was an effective use of the technique, as it showed how far the character had gone into the car park and allowed the 2 men behind him to catch up. We didn't use shot reverse shot in our opening, as there was no scenes with dialogue and no scenes where we found it necessary to show the characters looking at each other. It may have been effective in the shot where the thugs were first introduced, but I think our way of doing it was just as, if not more so, effective. Unlike our preliminary task, we did use a soundtrack this time. We have found that using non-diegetic background sound is very effective for setting the mood, and in our case, creating tension, something we didn't do in our preliminary task. I have learnt the importance in setting in my media project after doing our preliminary task and moving on to our final production. In our continuity task, we filmed in a school which wasn't a very appropriate setting for the piece we were filming. Now we have learnt that the setting plays a great role in films, and we filmed our opening outside of school to create a better atmosphere. I also learnt how to use more equipment, such as the jib, once we started our final production, and I found more tools that I could use on the various websites and computer programs I used for my work. Overall, I think my filming skills and general professionalism when it comes to media products has developed and improved greatly since we did our preliminary task.